In today's exclusive deep dive, we return to a single instant that froze a studio, lit up the timelines, and breathed life into a romance so many assumed had settled quietly into the archive of what-ifs. Before we begin, remember why you're here. You live for the truth hiding in the glow of the spotlight. So make sure you're subscribed to Turkish series stars, tap join if you want to support this work even more, and hit that like button if you believe love can thunder without ever raising its voice. Now, let's draw the curtain back. What started as a light-hearted nudge from a late-night host turned into a broadcast quake that no one in the room was prepared to feel. The show had been humming along in its usual tempo, easy chatter, soft laughter, cue cards flipping. Until the moment Erkan Meriç pushed back his chair and crossed the floor to the piano. The lights weren't dramatic, only the gentle wash reserved for a casual music interlude. And still, something in his stance shifted the air. The way he sat, the way his fingers hovered over the keys, held back by a pause that felt less like stagecraft and more like a memory settling into place. People sensed it before he struck a note. He breathed in, not with showy flair, but with the focus of someone steadying a heartbeat before exposing something that could bruise if mishandled. Then he leaned toward the mic and, with a voice carried by unfinished pages, offered a dedication that sent a thrill through every headset, camera rig, and startled human in the room. This is for you, Hazal. We're walking on different streets now, but some echoes never fade. It didn't sound like a stunt. It sounded like a reckoning disguised as music. The words rang through the studio like a bell struck once and left to tremble. A cameraman later admitted he tightened his arms so hard the frame shook, and he had to recalibrate just to hold focus. The host, famous for razor-sharp banter, grew completely still, jaw softened in surprise, as if he'd wandered into a confession never intended for anyone's ears. The audience quieted so intensely that when the piano bench creaked, the tiny sound leapt across the room like a shout. The song Erkan chose was no accident. It belongs to the archive of longing, music for promises that never quite found their landing, for love carried carefully through time and distance, for conversations that ended prematurely and left the last line suspended. When he reached the verse about a door left open a fraction, his voice wavered, not with weakness, but with the tiny tremor anyone who is loved beyond reason recognizes. It lasted a heartbeat, and yet it told a story by itself. The live chat erupted as if a dam had broken. Comments poured in, frantic and hopeful. He isn't over her. Someone tag Huzzal. They still fit. Clipped reactions ricocheted from one platform to another. Within minutes, timelines blossomed into little altars to a feeling people thought had gone mute. But what came next no one could have predicted. A dozen minutes after the credits rolled, Hazal Subaşı posted. No glossy caption, no PR-approved paragraph. A black and white image, bare and intentional. 2 words beneath it, I listened. And with that, a song turned into a countrywide conversation. 2 words that called curiosity forward and set hope humming. 2 words that made nostalgia feel, for the first time in a long time, like a future tense. By morning, a fellow actress close to Huzzal spoke carefully on television, her voice caught between restraint and empathy. She said Huzzal hadn't expected anything like that. She had watched live. She had cried. Not the kind of tears you hide, but the kind you recognize as tender and old, the kind you think you've packed away until a melody picks the lock. Another insider described the rest of the night. How she replayed the performance again and again, fingers trembling a little, breathing uneven. They said it felt to her like opening a journal she'd sworn to keep shut forever. Their connection has fascinated the public not because of scandals or noisy feuds, but because of something that felt quietly honest. What they shared was always described as intense and fragile at once. Beautiful, but delicate under the weight of schedules that didn't align, careers that demanded everything, and the relentless observation that trails people who live on camera. They never threw each other under a headline. They never dismantled what existed between them in pieces for everyone to examine. They drifted, gently, into separate orbits, and whenever a question came, they answered with respect. But respect, as experience teaches, doesn't rinse away feeling. Online, the wave became unstoppable. Fan pages resurfaced moments buried in archives, behind-the-scenes chuckles, those quiet exchanges between takes, glances with too much truth to belong solely to the characters being portrayed. Editors stitched a new montage, Erkan at the piano interlaced with their scenes, a braid of art and real life, and the video surged to 1 million views inside a day. People weren't only reminiscing, they were rooting. Believing that some stories pause, then gather breath. Days later, Hazal was seen at a small cafe tucked on a side street. A long coat, a notebook tucked beneath her arm, a gait that said she was moving carefully so as not to jostle her own thoughts. Observers noticed a ring, a simple silver band, engraving hidden inside, unmistakable to those who remember details. The one Erkan had given her on their 3rd anniversary. Its return said more than any press statement ever could. When she stepped onto a red carpet not long after, the reporters arranged themselves as if braced for thunder yet unsure how hard to knock on the door. She was gracious, poised, a touch far away. Then she turned slightly, offered a breath of clarity, and let the room lean in. Sometimes music says what years of dialogue can't quite hold, she murmured, voice low but steady. I heard it. And yes, it reached me. She added nothing else. She didn't need to. Meanwhile, photographers caught Erkan leaving a recording studio late in the evening, jacket over his shoulder, weariness softened by something like peace. A reporter, nerves steeled, asked if the session had anything to do with Hazal. Erkan's answer was a small, unguarded smile and a line that made every notification buzz. Some stories earn a second shot at an ending. 6 words, and the internet shivered again. Officially, nothing has been declared. No staged handholding for cameras. No joint statement polished to a high sheen. And yet the landscape between them feels different now. What once seemed like a thick pain keeping 2 lives apart feels thinner, like fabric that could give under the weight of a memory repeated too many times. Perhaps this is the start of a continuation. Perhaps it is a careful farewell wrapped around one last song. Either way, it arrived through a piano, a dedication that sounded like truth, and a reply of 2 spare words. Maybe that's why so many people care. Because sometimes love doesn't roar back, it returns softly, the way music settles in a room after the applause fades, meant for one person who just happens to be listening. It doesn't rewrite the past, it folds it closer, teaches it a new rhythm. And in that rhythm, the heart decides what to keep. There are little details that keep surfacing, each one pulling the thread a bit more. A crew member from the show mentioned that the music stand held a page torn from a notebook, not formal sheet music, as if he'd scribbled down the chords the way a person writes a letter they aren't sure they'll send. A stylist whispered that Erkan asked for a plain shirt and nothing shiny, that he didn't want anything to distract from the sound. A makeup artist said he laughed easily at rehearsal, but the laughter didn't reach his eyes until after he played. Friends say Hazal has been walking more, that she chooses the longer route to the market, that she pauses on bridges because the wind sounds like pages turning. She's been writing, not scripts, not posts, but something you tuck into a drawer and take out at night. She added an old song to a private playlist, and even though no one can see that, the people around her can tell when it's playing. There's a softness in her shoulders, a kind of listening you do only when you're ready for an answer. At the cafe, she stirred her tea slowly, left-handed as always, and a couple at the next table noticed she smiled when a pianist on the speaker slid into a minor chord. The ring flashed when she reached for the cup. Someone posted the picture, and by noon, the photo had been analyzed like a rare document. The engraving, blurry in the image, was still legible enough for those who remember, a date that mattered, tucked inside where only the wearer would feel it against the skin. When the gala night arrived, she walked the carpet as if the flashes were just weather to move through. A journalist tried to ask about the dedication, stumbled, then simply asked if she felt seen by the song. She looked at him as if he'd unknowingly asked the right question. It felt like the quiet answer to things we never finished asking, she replied. Then she stepped inside, and the doors closed. For his part, Erkan has been spotted carrying a notebook of his own, the corners softened by use. People near the studio say he's been staying late, recording takes past midnight, and then sitting alone at the piano when everyone else has gone. A security guard said that when the hallway is empty, the melody floats out so faintly you almost think you dreamed it. He leaves with tired eyes and that same folded jacket, and the smile that found him after the broadcast still touches his mouth like a secret he's careful not to lose. The fan edits keep multiplying. A pair of hands at a piano cut against a clip of them laughing between scenes. The half-open door lyric matched to a behind-the-scenes glance that looks alarmingly like truth. There's a particular video where the moment he says her name is followed by a silent shot of her looking down, and somehow the silence between those two frames is louder than any soundtrack. Some say the ring is simply nostalgia, a relic pulled from a velvet box for comfort. Others say it's a signal, a bridge, a small silver promise that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. Some argue that art is art, that dedications on air are theater, that the heart is no place to stage an encore. And yet thousands of people keep returning to that single refrain, you can hear when something is real. It doesn't have to shout. It doesn't have to win a debate. It only has to keep beating. There's no telling where this goes from here. Perhaps there will be a dinner table we never see, a bowl of olives, a pot of tea, and a conversation long overdue. Perhaps there will be a walk by the water with no cameras, where words land as gently as footsteps and the past listens in. Perhaps they will step into separate cars at night, at peace, grateful for a song that let them say what needed saying. Or perhaps there will be new photographs, not staged but caught by accident, of two people learning how to stand close again without stepping on the story they already told. Do you think this is their second chapter or a perfect goodbye expressed in chords and restraint? Share what you feel below, and tell us which stars you want us to uncover next here on Turkish Series Stars. If this journey moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Turkish Series Stars, become a member by pressing join if you want to support us more, and leave your thoughts, we read every one. Until we meet again, this was Turkish Series Stars, where the truest stories don't always hide between the notes. Sometimes, they become the notes, played softly for exactly the person who needs to hear them.